Let's take back our city, one vaccination at a time. Safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines are here. Get yours when it's your turn. Learn more at nyc.gov/COVID vaccine. No matter how much we want it gone, COVID-19 is still here. That's why we all need to keep wearing our face coverings, keep physical distancing, and keep washing our hands. And as always, stay at home if you're feeling sick. The COVID-19 vaccine is available to certain groups in NYC, but now is not the time to stop protecting ourselves. Learn more at nyc.gov/health/coronavirus.
Good evening, everyone. Muy buenas noches a todos. Welcome to Conversaciones, Música, hosted by Hostos Center for the Arts and Culture. My name is José Calderón, co-host of Que Viva la Música on WFDU with Vicky Sola, and the Mambo Machine on 89.9 FM in New York. We are so fortunate this evening with Tito Rodríguez Jr., an important representative of our music for his own merits as a band leader and a representative of his father, Tito Rodríguez. We'll discuss many important details of his father's life and his own development throughout the presentation. But first, the Hostos Center for the Arts and Culture, an integral part of Hostos Community College of the City University of New York since 1982, is a resource for students and faculty and serves the cultural needs of South Bronx residents and neighboring communities. The Ostos Center for the Arts and Culture is recognized nationally as a leader in Latin and African-based programming and is dedicated to the development of emerging artists and the creation of new work. Ostos Center events are sponsored by the Ostos Community College Foundation with funds from the National Endowment for the Arts, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council, the Coalition of Theaters of Color, the New York State Council on the Arts with the support of Governor Andrew M. Cuomo and the New York State Legislature, the Howard Gilman Foundation, the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, the Office of New York State Assemblyman Jose Rivera, and the Office of New York City Council member Rafael Salamanca Jr. Visit the Ostos Center website at www.ostoscenter.org to learn more and to view upcoming online events. Well, when we speak of the soundtrack of our lives, ladies and gentlemen, we evoke memories, experiences, and feelings we all transmit through the sounds that delight us. Many like me owe our knowledge and exposure to our parents and elders who commanded how and when these tunes were played. We can relate to those family gatherings, Saturday morning or afternoon cleaning sessions, or simply a weekend treat of family unity around the record player. My parents were delightful in selecting a vast array of genres that eventually gave me the strongest desire to dedicate my life to cultivating this vital form of entertainment. From La Sonora Matancera to Lou Rawls, Beethoven to Rolando La Serie, Arsenio Rodríguez to steel drums, and the list continues. One album stood out because it stated the unity of so many elements to be celebrated with a voice that touches the heart each time we listen to. I'm speaking of Carnaval de las Américas, and the voice is the unforgettable Tito Rodríguez. He was and always will be the consummate professional, historically grounded and heavily respected by all his peers of yesterday and today. Revered by a world of fans, he maintains so much relevance even after 48 years of his physical departure of this world. From his up-tempo guarachas, mambo, and cha-cha-chas to his delightful boleros with lush arrangement, Tito Rodríguez is the singer of singers, and no one can compare in magnitude and stature. While we continue to celebrate his life and legacy, ladies and gentlemen, a soul emerged that makes his memory so fulfilled of happiness in following his footsteps. We've enjoyed his contributions these last 40 years, and so much yet is still to come. Before I introduce him to join us in Conversaciones Música, let's have a glimpse of a video of his father, Tito Rodríguez.
En la vida hay amores que nunca pueden olvidarse, imborrables momentos que siempre guarda el corazón, porque aquello que un día nos hizo temblar de alegría es mentira que hoy pueda olvidarse con un nuevo amor. He besado otras bocas buscando nuevas ansiedades y otros brazos extraños me estrellan llenos de emoción, pero solo consiguen hacerme recordar los tuyos que inolvidablemente vivirán en mi Damas y caballeros, Julio Gutiérrez.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tito Rodríguez Jr. Hi, Tito.
Jose, thank you for the invitation. It's an honor for me to be here on Hostel's Cultural Arts. So I'm really honored that you are having me tonight.
The honor is truly ours because who you are and who you represent is so great in our community and in our lives.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, let's start with getting to know you. And I'm sure many people have heard this, but in this night, let's get the opportunity to know you a little better. Tell us of your earliest memories growing up. And you grew up where? In New York and Puerto Rico?
No. I grew up in Little Neck, Queens. That's where my father bought his first home. I lived there from 1955 to 1967. And it was an upper middle class neighborhood in Queens. And I absolutely loved it there. I have a lot of fond memories in that home. We had a finished basement, and my father used to rehearse his band there. And it was just an incredible place to live. And I got to witness a lot of rehearsals that he had in that basement. Wow. And it was like a nightclub. It had a full bar, a kitchen, all the musical instruments, a baby grand piano. He had an unbelievable stereo and audio system down there. And, I got to see a lot of legends rehearse with him in that home.
I could just imagine. Have you passed by there in recent years?
Yeah, I went there like probably 10 years ago, if you want to call that recent. I mean, it doesn't look anything like when I lived there. And I'm kind of funny that way. Any place that I've ever moved from, I don't go back because it's never the same. I just want to remember it when I lived there. And even in Puerto Rico, with the pagoda is a beautiful home, but it's nothing. It doesn't look anything like when I lived there. It's kind of tough to do that.
I understand. I totally understand. Listen, you have a very unique composition of your family in the society of the development at the time. You grew up with two cultures, Puerto Rican and Japanese. Am I correct?
Absolutely, 100%.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the great thing is, being Japanese and Puerto Rican, they both like rice.
So the fusion is very easy.
So who's got it better than me? Now, but it's a very interesting story. My mother was Japanese. She was born in California, but she had a rather interesting life growing up. She was interned in a camp during the war because they interned the Japanese Americans while her brothers were fighting for the 442, which was the Japanese division army in the United States. And that was a real tragedy. Her parents came over. There were 11 of them. And my grandfather, who I never met, obviously, was pretty successful in his own right out in Seattle. And they ended up losing everything. I mean, they took their home away from them and they put them in an internment camp while her brothers were fighting. And one of my uncles received the Medal of Honor posthumously from Bill Clinton.
Really?
So, yes. And so that was a very, very tragic thing that happened to all Japanese Americans during the war. And she graduated school in the camp, and she ended up, later on in life moving to Chicago when the war ended, and then ended up in New York. And she was worked as a model, as a chorus girl, and as a singer at the China Dog Club, which was like a few blocks away from the Palladium. That's where my parents met. I think Jose Corbello's orchestra was was playing in the China Doll at that time. I mean, she wasn't working with him, but, you know, because they had a separate review. But my father was in that band, and that's how they met. And they both had similar parallels in their lives growing up. They were both orphans. They both lost their parents at a very young age. You know, they had lost everything. My father had lost everything. His father, when his father passed away young, they had no money. They were really struggling. It was a very hard time in Puerto Rico at the time. So it's pretty ironic that they came from the same background, that they would hook up together and create this persona. My dad, as an entertainer, was my mother decided that he had a better opportunity, a better chance of making it as a singer. So she dedicated her life to raising our family, and she managed the business. She was the brain. She did all the contracts. She did all the bookkeeping. She did the taxes. She made sure that all his publishing, his music was handled correctly for the publishing. And without her, he would have not had the success financially that he had. She kept it together. She allowed him to go and do his thing and perform without having to worry about any manager ripping him off or anything. And, you know, a lot of people don't know that about my mother, but she was the key to, from a business point, of his success.
That's incredible. And we never heard this news before. We didn't know that anecdote about your mom, but it's great, and I appreciate that you taking the time to tell us about her. Do you still adapt to certain traditions that your mom learned in your current life?
Well, as far as the Japanese culture goes,
correct.
The only thing is you know, perfection. They're very like into doing things to perfection and seeing things to the end. No quitting. Doesn't matter what you want to do. You start something, you finish it. And I think I've gotten that from her for sure. I mean, you know, paying my bills on time and all that kind of stuff. But
I would hope so.
yeah. But the bottom line is, as far as the Japanese culture thing, no. My mother was very Americanized. I mean, we did eat Japanese food. She spoke Japanese, but she never spoke Japanese to me in the home. So I never got to learn Japanese, which I was very angry about. And my father never spoke Spanish to me in the home.
Really? Really?
No. I learned Spanish in Puerto Rico because he never spoke Spanish to us at home. It was always in English because my mother didn't speak Spanish. So, and when I went to live in Puerto Rico, like they would say, you know, como tú puedes yo de Tito Rodríguez, you know, habla español. Well, you know, ask him.
But you learned it. You took the time. I mean, it took you time, but of course you learned it, you achieved it, and here you are.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was a culture shock when we moved. After living in New York all those years and moving to Puerto Rico, it was very, very different for us. It was an adjustment. I'm not going to lie to you. It was,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But you accomplished it. And you lived there how many years?
We moved to Puerto Rico in '67, and the pagoda was not finished until 1969, and then we ended up moving in 1972 to Miami shortly after he got ill.
Gotcha. Tell me of the earliest remembrance that you have of your dad.
Well, like I said, you know, those rehearsals in the basement. But you know, my dad was was Dad. He was not a star to me. I knew that he was famous, but he was a family man. He provided for us like no other father you could even imagine you would ever want. I palled around with him all the time. Whenever I could. I loved being in his presence. The only thing that I didn't like was whenever I would have to go into the city with him. That meant that, suit and tie.
But you know what? That was such an important quality of him, and you've acquired it, very well.
Thank you. But that was like the deal. Whenever he would say to me, we got to go to the city. I knew what that meant. But, he took me to baseball games. I got to meet all the fabulous Latino superstar baseball players, Orlando Cepeda, Roberto Clemente. They were close friends. So, I was in heaven just hanging out with him at ball games. I remember watching the Macy's Day Parade for the Palladium.
Really?
He used to arrange it because he used to come up Broadway, and we used to go. He used to arrange it with Maxwell Hyman, who was the owner of the Palladium, to allow us to go into, because he wasn't into freezing, he didn't want to be cold. And we would go there and watch the parade. So, I have a lot of fond memories, and in Puerto Rico, even more.
I hear you.
Yeah. We can get into that, but I was the cameraman on his television show.
We're going to get into that. We'll get into that. Why don't we go into a clip of you in action?
Excellent.
Okay, let's go with Tito Rodríguez Jr., ladies and gentlemen. Tito, that tune is called Bon Sueño?
Sueño, right. From the Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
Tito, from the Hollywood album that he did, right.
Very nice, very nice. Tito, was music a part of your life inside the home? I mean, you told us going to the, ball games and
oh, yeah.
Going to the city, but was music, like directly in part of it, or were you steered away from that at home? How was that?
No. On the contrary, like I said, he had vibes, timbales, conga, bongo, piano, and a Ludwig drum set. And when I was 8 or 9, I gravitated to that drum set, and I was always playing on it. And he noticed, hey, you're playing pretty good. And that's when he started to teach me the rhythms and the approach to the timbales, how to play the different cascara, the claves, when to play the bell, because he was a great percussionist. He was a great bongocero himself and timbalero. So he taught me, some tricks, and I got hooked into it. And then I took many, many years of private lessons on the drum set. I wasn't a timbalero in the beginning. I was playing drums, and then as the years went on, and I got through high school, then I attended Berkeley College of Music, and finished up at the University of Miami. But he never pushed me to do anything. He never said, "Hey, you're going to be a musician." Whatever I wanted to do, I could do as long as I did it well.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's, I used to go to the Palladium Ballroom and watch him rehearse.
Okay.
And I think that's when I got the bug.
Really?
Well, when I was like that age, he used to, like I said, I was always palling around with him. And back then, musicians were paid weekly. They weren't paid like they are now. And it was through the Musicians Union, Local 802. So paydays were once a week. So what he used to do is when he would schedule for them to all show up to get paid, they would do a rehearsal at the Palladium or at the Roseland. And if I happened to be off of school that day and I was with him, I got to witness that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was actually in the Palladium watching him rehearse, and I loved always being around that music. I mean, how could you not?
Infectious.
Oh, and then I'm sure I was hearing it while I was in the womb too.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So it was in my blood. I mean,
absolutely. When did you realize, discover the greatness of your dad? Was it something that was gradual, that you saw him throughout the years, you accompanied him to rehearsals, but the magnitude that your dad reached across the world, I mean, when did you realize that for yourself?
I'm going to tell you when I realized it. When he came back from Argentina and showed us the photographs of the people that filled the stadium at Luna Park, I knew he was somebody then. And the gold records, and the gold records back then were 18 karat gold.
Wow.
They were not
gold.
Yeah, they were not these fake knockoff. Yeah, I got it then. When I saw that, I got it. And then when we moved to Puerto Rico, all the people always saying hello to him, and and he was friendly to everybody. He gave people time. If somebody went up to him and wanted to talk to him, he was cool about it. And so I noticed it there. And when we lived in the pagoda is when I really noticed it, because we had no privacy in that home. People were yelling Tito, 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 Tito throughout the whole night. They were constantly banging on our door, asking for water, to get a glimpse of him. And yeah, that's when I got it.
Gotcha. So you were telling us in the previous segment that you were working behind the cameras, but you were still doing the learning of, playing the instruments, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I was always taking private lessons wherever we moved. He would find me a teacher. But I wasn't playing. I wasn't really playing. On the drum set, Latin. I was playing a lot of bossa nova type stuff, rock and roll, obviously, and jazz. I was really into Count Basie because he was into Count Basie. So that was his favorite orchestra, by the way. And we always had Count Basie playing in the home or in his cars. And but yeah, I mean, I've always been around it, the music, and it wasn't until we moved to Miami where I really started getting into Latin music. Yeah.
You never got to play with your dad, though?
No, I never did, because he wouldn't allow me to. Because he said, no free ride. You gotta get educated, even though you're ready to do it. And he always praised me. He was always very proud of me when I would play practice at home. He said, no, he goes, you gotta earn it.
Excellent.
I was pretty mad about that, but
No, no.
But no, I get it now. I get it now.
And you were working as a cameraman, you said? Well,
Yeah. Well, when he did the show in Puerto Rico for 1 year. He did 31 hour as a musical variety show, and that was another thing. I love going to the television station and seeing all the electronics and everything, and all the technicians at Channel 7 in Puerto Rico befriended me, and they took me under their wing, and they showed me everything there was to know. And I was like, oh, this camera thing. And they showed me how to work the camera, and I got pretty good at it. And like 4 months after training, I was one of the camera guys on the show.
wow.
And it was really cool because my dad they used to do the recording of the show on a Friday, and the typical day in the studio would be from 9 a.m. to 4 a.m.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So they would spend the whole day recording all the pistas for him and the artists that were on the show. They would record the show, and then he would get all of his guests out of the way, and he would always record the songs that he was going to do on the show last. So that meant that at 12 midnight, he was starting to sing the songs that he would do for each specific show. So it was a long day, and it was freezing in that studio. It was like 40 degrees. So you can imagine, you're working from 9 a.m. to 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. It's pretty tough to do that weekly. And but that's where I really got my education in this. Okay, I got to see those bands rehearse. He hired Ray Santos and Rene Hernandez as staff arrangers for that television show, and I got to see those guys work.
Wow.
And I got to see their approach. And that was history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. God rest their souls. And that carried over into your own personal life.
Yeah. I mean, when my father passed away in 1973, obviously he started TR Records in 1971. And when he passed away in 73, my brother-in-law, who was the vice president of the label at that time, he said, I got an idea. He goes, let's do an album. And I go, really? And he goes, yeah. He says, and let's call it Curious, to see if people would be curious to do it. So that's when we signed Jose Alberto, and I got Ruben Blades and Alberto Santiago to sing coro on that album, and Ruben wrote 2 songs for me.
Wow.
On that album. He was just starting out with Fania at the time. And he was really cool, and he gave me a couple of songs, and that was the first album that Jose Alberto did stateside, was with me. And
this is before his fame, his years, his collaborations, until his own independent career.
Right. It was the first recording that he did in the United States with me, and then he ended up going to 73 and moving on.
Exactly.
But because we recorded the album sold very well. It did like 50,000 copies in Africa alone.
I have one.
Okay, yeah, and but oddly enough, we never really performed. We did the album. He got out of it what he wanted to get out of it. I got out of it what I wanted to get out of it, and we parted ways. and when I did that gig with you at Miss, that was the first time that I think I played Se Comienza por el Uno.
You told me that.
And that is the first time in like over 40 years that I even whipped out a song from Curious. I never performed those songs from that album. But you know what? I'm going to start because people really like that album.
I suggest you do, because
Yeah.
the reception and everyone's happiness when you played those tunes. Well, that tune in particular.
Yeah, and then Oye Mi Son. I mean, there's so many tunes on that album. I had
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I had great writers like Johnny Ortiz, Rubin. I had Willie Mullings was an arranger on that, and Marty Scheller. I had some
Heavy hitters.
Eddie Martinez was the producer of that. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I really wasn't ready to embark on a musical career at that point.
So you did it and you weren't ready. You weren't ready to continue. It was just curiosity, curious, as the title of the album.
I was just a young 20-year-old. I definitely had some anger issues with my dad passing away. It's such a, I was 18 years old, and I was not in a good space. I was finding my way. Let's put it that way, and I wasn't, really ready to do that.
But you know what? Let's take a break, and let's go to musically what you did after Curious, which is Eclipse. Let's go to this video clip with Mujer Erótica, one of your greatest hits. Let's go with that.
Cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, we just finished listening to Tito Rodríguez Jr. with one of his great hits, Mujer Erótica. The year was 1994, 19 years after Curious. You recorded this on what was at one point TR Records that became top 10 hits, if I'm not mistaken, and one of the last recordings on the label.
Right.
And
yeah, top 10 hits they bought TR.
Yes. This album was incredible. Tell us about this experience. Why the wait 19 years later? And this seems to be a pattern with you, and we'll talk about that.
Well, you know, I got married very young at 22, and it was time to find a job with benefits.
Gotcha.
And so I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? So I got into television, and I've been doing television for over 40 years now. I'm just celebrating my 34th year at CBS News.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and I knew that I wanted to do something that would be in the arts. I just didn't want like a day job, you know, in an office or whatever. And so I figured, what can I get into? What do I like to do? Because my parents always told me, you know, you need to do a job that you like doing as a kid. If you can do that, if anybody can find a job that you enjoyed as a kid or wanted to do as a kid, then it's not a job, you know? So obviously it was television, because that's where I got my roots at a very, you know, as a teenager. So I embarked on that career, and that's what it was. I mean, that's why I was able to earn a very good living and do music as a hobby, which is a luxury, and especially now with COVID. Oh my God, I feel so horrible for what the musicians are going through. It's a very sad situation, but that's why there is the gap. And there was another. Well, besides the Big Three Palladium Orchestra, which I did, I guess it was another 20-year gap.
This is what I'm talking about. This is the pattern.
Well,
you come from a lineage of your father that recorded what, 2 records per year at a certain period of time, if I'm not mistaken? Or it seemed like it, because he had
3 to 4, actually.
Look at that. Look at that.
Yeah, but it was a different time back then, because you didn't have the internet. They had to constantly keep fresh, and they had to be churning out new product. And so, I mean, they really didn't have a choice back then. They had to keep it alive. But so, okay, so to your point, yeah, from 94, you know, I did the album. I had a very good run, because back in the 90s, as you know, where there was over 40, 50 clubs back then. And so when Mujer Erótica was a hit on La Mega here in New York and in Puerto Rico, my band was working a lot. We were doing 3-4 nights a week and doubles. I mean, it was an excellent run.
Absolutely.
And then it kind of dried up. Okay. No, it did. I think merengue started to take over. If I'm not wrong.
You're correct.
Yeah, right. And so it dried up. So yeah, so I kind of went into doing what I was doing in television, and then Mario Grillo calls me up and says, "Hey, I want to talk to you. We're going to have a meeting." And we had a meeting at the Marriott Hotel at the Trade Center.
Okay.
And he says, I got this crazy idea. He goes, you know, I want to do a band called the Big Three Palladium Orchestra, and I want to do the music of the Three Masters, and it's going to be a 20-piece orchestra, and I got the promoter from London and the agent, and I'm going, 20 pieces? How is that going to work, right? Well, he says, I just want to do one gig. He goes, let's just do the one gig. Let's just do it. So we did the Verizon Jazz at Columbia University, and the rest is history, man. We lasted 10 years. We traveled all over the world.
Wow.
We recorded the the Big Three Palladium Orchestra live at the Blue Note. We funded it ourselves, and we had a heck of a run with that orchestra. And then we just kind of like decided, 10, 11 years is enough, and we kind of did our own thing. And I really wanted to record after that, but I couldn't get a record deal. Nobody would sign me.
But this is also the coming of the end of the record companies per se, and the beginning of independent works.
Right. Well, and in all fairness, prior to the Big Three, I mean, don't think that I didn't try to record. Nobody would give me the time of day because it was a monopoly. They controlled everything. The record companies controlled everything. So if they weren't interested, you weren't going to get a deal. And then it started to change a little bit. Then they got really slick. They said, okay, you put the money up for it. But then back then you needed a distributor. Okay. So you would have to pay your money, record, and shop it. And that was kind of like tricky where now it's a whole different ballgame. Now you do everything under one, whoever you decide to pick, and they do your distribution and your pro distribution, and it's kind of like an even playing field. Like nobody can tell you no. If you've got the money to do it or the funding, you can record and you can get your product out there. It was a very different time between Eclipse and when I finished the Big Three, and then I did Transición,
and that's most recent. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. During Curious, you didn't record anything that your father played, but in Eclipse you did. That was the first time that you recorded something of your father. Am I correct or am I mistaken? No, in
Eclipse I recorded Sun Sun Babae and J Bolsonaro with a different arrangement.
Okay.
I had Ray Santos do those two, and I said, I always try to do one or two songs of my dad, at least one per album. It's a good luck thing for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and on Transición I did El Vive Bien, okay, which he recorded on El Doctor. 23
years later from the Big Three, am I correct?
Yeah, it's, well, let's see. Yeah, it's pretty close. Not quite 23, but yeah. So to your point, my Lou Gehrig streak is over. Because I just celebrated my birthday, and I don't have another 20 years. So
who knows? Listen, if artists like Cher every decade come around and record something and renew their careers, why not you? You seem to do it very well.
It's funny. The response has been really, really good whenever I record, and I'm really thankful that the followers stick with me because, I must be doing something right. Absolutely. Because you can't just record every 20 years and disappear and expect people to follow you. But I haven't had that problem, and it's great. And I wanted to record again right after Transición, but then this whole COVID thing happened, and it's derailed everyone. So
it's a time also of reflection, of renewal. You're charging your battery because once everything clears up, you'll be able to do many, many things. We're going to go with a recording from your most recent, from Transición, Con el Tanque Lleno. Let's go with that, and we'll come back and continue talking.
Great.
corazón. La gorra. Hey Tito, great set, great set. I was there.
Yeah, I know. That was a great night. We had a lot of fun.
We have some questions that our kind viewers have asked. I have Analisa Torres, who got a chance to see your father performing live in 1965, and she was 5 years old. And she asked, did your dad speak of the African contributions to Puerto Rican music? Was that part of an identity that he was able to focus on? What do you think?
Well, I think being half Cuban, he definitely, gravitated to the Afro-Cuban style of things, for sure. You could hear in his recordings the chants that he used to do. He really gravitated to that. So that was a major influence.
Absolutely. And the evolution of the music that he recorded from the early years until later on, it seemed very, very authentic, very, very criollo, as we would say.
Well, it's funny. I have a funny anecdote. In 2005, I had Ray Santos over to the house for dinner, and I got to record him for 3 hours.
Wow.
I asked him a lot of questions. And one of the things he told me was when he would arrange for him, my father had a shortwave radio, and he used to record the broadcasts in Havana. And he used to have a little portable reel-to-reel tape recorder. And he used to record those programs. And if he heard a song that he liked, he would give it to Ray to record. So all those sounds were coming out of Havana that he was listening to.
Incredible, incredible. And I advise everyone, and I'm sure you do too, to go further back into the repertoire that he recorded, because those older recordings are incredible. He did a lot of things that I think many people don't know he did.
Yeah. He was cutting edge, and he was very ahead of his time. I mean, I think he recorded one boogaloo, but but at least he gave it a shot, and he recorded in Italian. When the bossa nova became a craze, he did the bossa nova. And
it's funny that you mentioned that, because someone else by the name of Carrera, and we greet both Analisa and Carrera for taking the time to ask some questions. Your dad recorded Venezuelan tunes, Brazilian tunes. He also recorded a lot of in different languages. I know that the other day I picked up a recording, and he recorded in Italian, in Portuguese, I think. Am I mistaken?
I'm not sure about Portuguese, but definitely, yeah. Inedito was the name of the album. He recorded in Italian. Yeah. So he would try different things.
Absolutely, instrumentals, bossa nova, joropos.
But it was the boleros that changed his whole career. Absolutely. I'm not going to take away from the Palladium and all that, but when he became a soloist, he broke the band up and started doing ballads, which United Artists did not want him to do. He fought like heck to convince them to do a string album, boleros. They didn't want to do it.
Really?
No. And then they hooked them up with Leroy Holmes. And the rest is history.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Let's go with another video. Let's go with one of your friends. And I want you to talk a little bit about him, Gilberto Santa Rosa. I think he's definitely been able to channel a lot of your father's energy and preserve a lot of his memory through his own performances. What can you say about that?
Oh yeah, he's definitely like the number one fan, and serious fan. Memorabilia wise, he bought the pagoda. He models himself after him as far as the way he tries to look and carry himself, the way he manages his business. It's a very professional approach to the way he performs and runs his business, and he's knocking my father off from that standpoint. He respects my dad. His mom was a Tito Rodríguez fan. I think that has a lot to do with it, but he respects Dad. He has a lot of respect for the way my father handled himself professionally in the way he carried himself. He always looked sharp, and who wouldn't want to be like him?
Absolutely. Your father definitely set a standard that a lot of bands follow in terms of their presentation, from the art of dressing to the art of dancing on stage. That whole presentation bit, it's definitely an influence from your father.
Yeah, I mean, the visual, well, not only did the band have to sound stellar, but the visual aspect of his orchestra was very important to him. I mean, he had them custom fitted. If you made the band, he sent you to a tailor, and you had a custom suit made. I mean, he had 2 or 3 suits that they picked for the band, but it wasn't off the rack. You went and you got fitted, and you wanted everybody to look sharp. And that's, they could do that back then because they had the volume of work. Today it's like, if you got into Tito Rodríguez band or the Puente band or the Machito band, you were going to stay in there if you didn't blow it. You know what I mean? Because they were working.
Absolutely. Well, as a form of flattery to honor your dad's memory and, of course, your friendship with Gilberto Santa Rosa, let's see one of your performances, A Arriba Cumbiaremos.
Awesome.
Let's go with that.
Arriba cumbiaremos, baila chola mi compa. 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 ¡Mira! Arriba cumbiaremos, arriba cumbiaremos, arriba cumbiaremos. Me están llamando para bailar, no esperemos. Arriba cumbiaremos. Ustedes sigan bailando que nosotros tocando nos salimos. Arriba cumbiaremos. De lo Tito ven. Arriba cumbiaremos. Yo sé que tú no sabes. Arriba cumbiaremos. Todo el mundo a Carolina en el banco pues nos veremos. Arriba cumbiaremos. Como suena el ritmo y entonces vacilaremos. Arriba cumbiaremos. La pista está llena, todo el mundo gozando y aceptamos el mambo. Arriba cumbiaremos. Chao, 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 comando. Arriba cumbiaremos. No lo pare, no lo aguante, no lo pare, no lo pare, no. Arriba cumbiaremos. Arriba gozaremos. Arriba cumbiaremos. Arriba bailaremos. Arriba cumbiaremos. El ritmo me está gustando para empezar, nos veremos. Tito Rodríguez, el timbal sonando. Y al padre recordaremos. Arriba cumbiaremos. Arriba cumbiaremos. Arriba gozaremos. Arriba cumbiaremos. Míralo, arriba cumbiaremos. Arriba cumbiaremos. sonando, sonando. Bailando, sonando, la gente bailando, nos amanecemos. Arriba, vamos arriba, Tito, ven, en Carolina nos encontraremos. Chao, chao, como yo. Arriba, ven y baila como yo. Arriba, sigue la clave y nos entendemos. Mira cómo baila, mira cómo goza esta gente esta noche. Porque hay que más buen derroche bailando allá hasta el gallero. Para Carolina vienen todos los rumberos. Para Carolina los bamboleros. Arriba gozaremos. Para bailar romperemos. Mira.
I was excited. I didn't want it to end, but we have to come back and talk a little more.
Yeah, sure.
And we have a couple of more questions. Diana Santiago asks, what music do you prefer to play? Afro-Cuban, Latin jazz, salsa pa bailar? What do you prefer?
Well, salsa pa bailar, sure. I mean, I like Latin jazz, but that, you know, my music's for the dancer, and that's what I gravitate to. So.
Absolutely. Someone also asked on Facebook, tell us a little bit of what you know, of course, of the relationship between your dad, Machito, and Tito Puente.
I mean, they all respected each other. I mean, Tito Puente and my dad had a rivalry, obviously, you know. I mean, they didn't hate each other. It's just, it was a business thing. It was a top billing thing. It was an ego thing. And they always tried to outdo each other musically. And the winners were the public and the dancers, because those bands always tried to outdo each other musically, and they were raising the bar constantly. And but my father's relationship with Machito was really, really close. In fact, before my father passed away, Machito was accompanying my father, doing a lot of gigs, and he was the orchestra at the Madison Square Garden, which was my father's last performance. Because when my father had the record label, he was going back and forth to Miami and New York, and when promoters found out that he was in New York, they contacted him. He goes, "Oh, you're back, you got the band." He goes, "No, I'm back, but I don't have an orchestra." And that's how Machito came into play. He approached Machito and said, "Hey, you know, I got an opportunity to do some dances and performances. Would you be interested in the company?" And Machito said, "Sure." And so they integrated some musicians that my father had used, like Victor Paz and a few others in the band. And they had a nice little run. Mario told me, Mario was a mongosero in that band, and he told me that, you know, they did quite a few new gigs together, and they had a great time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That goes in the history books.
Yeah.
Someone asked of your next performance. When is your next performance in New York City?
That's a very good question, but I think, well, can we say it or no?
I mean, maybe you could give a little glimpse of what is to come.
We are in negotiations with Hostos College to do the tribute to Tito Rodríguez. They're already done. One for Machito and one for Tito Puente, and my dad's the next one in line. So we're working out the details, and if everything comes to fruition, it's going to be an incredible night with some big surprises, and we're just hoping that this COVID thing eases up and we can get the date confirmed on the books and go with it. But it's going to happen.
Very good, very good. And people can always be informed following Hostos Center for the Arts and Culture, your page, of course. And I'm always putting a little bit of everything so everybody knows what's going on. So definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of offers out of New York, in Florida, to perform, but no. I don't think it's safe.
Okay.
And so we're just going to wait and see what happens here.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
What do you have in store? Because you finished the last recording, or the most recent is Transición, which was in 2017, correct?
Correct. It was released in 18, right? Recorded in 2007. Well, this is what's going on. For the past year, I've been writing a book on my father through the eyes of my point of view, my mom's story, my dad's story. We're writing it from scratch. We've been working on it for over a year because the story needs to be told, and there's interest in a miniseries for it. Because we have quite a story. If you take the Japanese angle of the family and his angle of the family, it's more than just a book about, the Palladium and doing gigs. There's a real story here. And it's almost like a Brian Piccolo ending. It's you have rags to riches, you have, dying at a very young age, unfortunately, and you have a love story there too. So, and that's the most important thing. So I want to be able to tell that story and to show a positive side. We know what all that other stuff looks like when they do movies, and all the dirty laundry comes out and everything, and nobody benefits from that. We want to do a movie that's an uplifting movie that people can see who my father was, how he handles his career, and be able to look up to him as a role model. And that's what we're going to try to do. I'm going to release Eclipse on vinyl and Transición on vinyl, which I'm very excited about. There's quite a buzz about the Eclipse vinyl that I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to add a bonus cut to that. When I originally recorded Eclipse, we had very bad snowstorms in the month of February in '94 when we recorded that, and the production got delayed, and so they wanted to release it. So I have one tune that I did mix to record, but it never made it. They wouldn't give me the time to do it. So when the vinyl comes out, I'm going to add that cut as a bonus track. So it kind of worked out.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then, eventually I'm going to work again with Pablo Chino Nunez. That was the first time that I worked with him on Transición. I had an amazing experience working with him on that album. And the best thing that came out of that was the friendship that I have now with Chino. I mean, I knew of Chino, but I never really performed with Chino or hung out with him. And we really worked very hard on Transición together and really formed a great friendship. So I'm looking forward to working with him again on that. And but we got to get rid of the COVID. I feel bad for people that are recording now, and you can't perform and promote it, and people are afraid to go into stores to buy it, and it's a whole situation. So, but it's all good. It's all good. And don't forget, in like a couple of years, we have my dad's 100th birthday coming up, as well as Puente. How ironic is that? So that there's going to be a lot of action when that happens. I'm going to plan concerts and do tributes to my dad, and so I have a lot of exciting things that are in the works.
Well, on that note, I want to end our session thanking you for the friendship that you've bestowed upon me for years.
Oh, thank you.
And for taking the time to join me in this venture with Conversaciones Música, hosted by Ostos Center for the Arts and Culture. Thank you, Tito, so much.
Thank you for having me, and I want to thank Ostos. I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for the fans for following me for all these years. I'm sorry for the 20-year gap, but I trust me that won't be happening again. And I really want to thank you and Vicky and Marisol, because you really went way beyond the Call of Duty when I came out with Transition, and you really helped me promote that CD, and I really appreciate the job you guys did. I mean, you had me on the show twice. That's just amazing that you would do that. I mean,
well, you know, you have us in your corner, so no worries, absolutely. And wait until all this comes out on vinyl and you start doing other things. You forget it.
No, it's great. Well, listen, I hope to see you soon in a live performance venue somewhere, and you know, everybody be safe.
Absolutely. And we're going to end it with your father. Performance.
Excellent.
We did on his show, and enjoying the beautiful portrait you have behind you and his memory. And of course you, Tito, thank you once again. And thank you to Ostos Center for the Arts and Culture for giving us the opportunity to chat with each and every one of you. Thank you for tuning in. Let's go with Tito Senior. Thank you.
Thank you.
Y ahora con ustedes, Tito Rodríguez.
Chao, 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 cobayo. Chao, 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 cobayo. Arriba cumbiaremos, baila chola mi compás. Arriba cumbiaremos, que baila chola mi compás. ¡Oh, vaya! Chao, 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 cobayo. Arriba cumbiaremos, baila chola mi compás. Arriba cumbiaremos, que baila chola mi compás. Tú sabes lo que siempre yo he sentido por ti. ¿Qué será? Yo no sé. ¿Qué será? Tengo una cosita que me sube y que me baja y que me dice jaja. ¿Qué será? Yo no sé. ¿Qué será? Quiero tenerte muy cerca de mí para ser feliz. Pero no sé, yo no sé qué será, que me encomiendo y me alejo de ti. Tengo una cosita que me sube y que me baja y que me dice, ajá. ¿Qué será? Yo no sé, ¿qué será? Anda. Ay, ¿qué será lo que me dice que va, que va? ¿Qué será lo que me dice anda? ¿Qué será lo que me dice yo no sé, cariño, dime qué será. Ay, ¿qué será lo que me dice que va, que va? Cosita linda, ¿qué será?